Greetings and salutations, my minions. Kunic here, back with yet another RPG horror story. And it is quite the doozy. You see, in most of the stories I cover, when there's a troubled player, the OP doesn't have to live with that player. But in this instance, they do, and it is, oh, so much worse for it. But before we get to the story, there's something I've got to cover first. Now, for those that have been following me for a while, you'll know that I've never had a sponsorship. And that's not for a lack of companies reaching out to me, there have been many. But, frankly put, most of these products just didn't resonate with me. Well, that changes now, as today's video is sponsored by Crown of the Oathbreaker. When I saw what this D&D campaign brought to the table, I knew it'd be something that you DMs, and even some players, would be interested in. Crown of the Oathbreaker is a dark adventure campaign that'll take your players from level 5 to level 12. But don't think that this will be a railroad, as it's been designed from the ground up to offer a multi-layered sandbox for your players. So what can you expect from it? Well, to name some of my favorites, you get 27 dungeon maps, 36 new subclasses and archetypes, 15 new spells along with 13 new feats, and 19 new, unique monsters. But there's a ton more than what I've mentioned, and everything is also beautifully illustrated. You can get the full playbook for as little as $20 USD, and heck, you can even purchase their Become an NPC bundle, where you can provide a picture of yourself that'll be illustrated and fully fleshed out as a character. And for those of you who have really had your interest piqued, their highest tier will not only see you become an NPC, but you'll also be made integral to the main plot of the story. Check out their Indiegogo page in the description to pre-order. Products will actually begin shipping next month, so be sure to get it in soon. And as an added bonus, scan the QR codes on screen to be taken to the iOS or Android app stores for their free Elder Brain Soundscape app. No matter where your players are, this app will help set the mood. And it's what's been playing as the ambiance for this sponsorship. Anyhow, let's get onwards with the story. Problem player booted from home. Attempts to build a new one using Acid Splash. Greetings all. Throughout my 18 years of tabletop role-playing games, I've had the good fortune of only encountering one problem player. But oh my, was he a doozy. You see, it was not enough for him to merely be a Nightmare D&D participant, but also a nightmare roommate. However, I'm getting ahead of myself. Full disclosure, this sequence of events took place nearly 10 years ago. While granular details are a bit fuzzy, I swear that everything this guy pulled is true. Myself and 5 of my pals were renting an off-campus house together during the second half of our college careers. Amongst them was my best friend, who hosted a weekly 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons campaign set in the Dark Sun setting. We were decently far into our quest to topple the tyrannical sorcerer kings, when our DM received a fateful phone call. On the other line was another amigo of ours, let's call him Corey, a fellow nerd around our age from a few cities over. He explained that he's looking for a place to crash for a short while. Evidently, some family drama caused a rather ugly shouting match between Corey and his parents that resulted in them kicking him out of the house. The DM ran this request by the rest of the tenants, and we agreed to offer Corey the living room until he found a place of his own, an invitation he gratefully accepted. He assured us it would only be for a week or two, as he'd already been doing online job and apartment hunting in the area. A few days later, his friend dropped Corey off with all of his stuff, and he officially began crashing on the living room couch. We also invited him to join the weekly campaign. This'll be fun, right? Week 1. Say, do you hear alarm bells? Our temporary roomie opted for a tiefling warlock and united with our group during an arena-style fighting tournament. Things were going fine for the first hour, until we noticed that nearly every attack lobbed his way would miss, even exceptionally high rolls. Our DM let it rock for the session, but we asked to review Corey's character sheet afterwards. It took only a few moments before he raised an eyebrow in concern. DM, Corey, where is the +2 miscellaneous bonus to your AC coming from? Corey, my tail armor. DM, your what? Corey, think about it. Since tieflings have tails, that means they have more appendages, where armor can be equipped. DM, except A, that's not a stated racial feature in the books, and B, there's no such thing as tail armor in the equipment guide. Corey, All I'm doing is correcting an obvious oversight on the part of Wizards of the Coast." He continued to limply argue that he deserves a higher AC than everyone, before relenting in the end. It's around the end of the first week that we start feeling the effects of Corey moving in. He wouldn't shower until around 2 p.m. each day, meaning we'd have to endure his odor when anywhere near the living room. Most times we saw him, Corey was playing Star Trek Online, using the community big screen TV. He'd also ask for rides, which wasn't too big of a deal. After all, with no car of his own, he had no reliable way to reach his job interviews. Well, I suppose there was public transport via the bus system, but those cost money that he didn't have when he moved in. Wait, what was that last part? Week 2. Another tale to spin. Corey had begun to test our collective patience. When he wasn't hogging the living room TV, he would criticize our taste in shows and video games that we'd watch/play on it. It didn't take long for this negative and haughty attitude to rear its wretched head within the guy's D&D habits either. Our newest ally saw fit to shoot down almost every strategy we concocted before proposing his own superior plan of action, naturally. What's more, Corey grew increasingly argumentative with the DM. His greatest hits include, "That rule is stupid. Actually, that's not how that works." And by far his personal favorite, 3.5 edition was so much better. Why don't we switch to that? Mercifully, we eventually hit another combat encounter, where his running commentary would taper. However, that's when we ran into a different issue. Corey was rolling an extra d20 while making basic melee attacks. When asked about it, he stated that he was wielding another dagger with his tail, and therefore gets an extra attack. As one might expect, the DM didn't really appreciate Corey granting himself an additional perk behind his back, and in direct defiance of the rules. Again. All he had to say in his defense was, "But that's how it worked in 3.5 edition. It was not. Thankfully, he again acquiesced to the DM and stopped rolling for 2 attacks. He explained that Corey was free to describe his tiefling slashing with a dagger held by his tail for favor, but for some reason, Corey didn't seem to like it as much when it didn't give him an in-game advantage. Weird. Week 3. Fort Acid Splash ain't up to code. House tensions are at an all-time high. Everybody stays in their rooms, lest they leave themselves vulnerable to the stink and complaints emanating from the living room. Corey's newest favorite pastime is pissing and moaning about the results of the Spider-Man vs. Batman episode of Death Battle to anyone who will listen. To his credit, he was applying for jobs, but they were few and far between, compared to his hours of Star Trek Online while living at our place rent-free. D&D night arrives, and nothing could have prepared us for the absurdity that awaited. The desert night crept ever closer towards our intrepid band of heroes. Having hastily escaped to the Battle Coliseum, we had no opportunity to procure bedrolls or camping tents. Thankfully, we possessed everything we needed to create an ad hoc shelter, a warlock with acid splash. While the rest of the party searched for a nearby cave, Corey has his tiefling continually cast his at-will spell, 4E's equivalent of a cantrip, acid splash at the sand on the ground. Understandably perplexed, our esteemed DM inquired about his end goal. His answer, "Corey, I'm constructing a small fortress out of diamond. I ran the numbers and, based on how frequently I can cast it, I should be able to build one big enough to house all of us within 2 in-game hours." A flabbergasted silence blanketed the table like a burial shroud. Corey, "Oh yeah, if it's okay with you, DM, I'd also like to keep little bastion slits in the walls for defensive fire, in case we're attacked." DM, "That's not how diamonds work. Like, at all." Thus, Corey saw fit to grind the entire session to a halt, in a vain attempt to scientifically prove his tiefling could pull off this stunt. The DM was forced to pull up his laptop and Google how diamonds form. This was before the advent of smartphones. And wouldn't you know it, Corey was wrong. But was he deterred? Oh, perish the thought. He insisted that the DM seek out this one specific website that he found this one time, but doesn't remember the exact name of, by plugging these specific words into the search bar, yada yada yada. Thankfully, DM-san had had enough. He firmly told Corey he was not allowed to do that, and moved on. Corey sort of just sulked in the corner for the remainder of the session. We had all reached our breaking point. The next day we called a meeting with Corey, and let him know that he was swiftly wearing out his welcome. We expressed our aggravations about his negative and petty attitude bogging down both the campaign and the living situation. Perhaps a little too bluntly, if I'm being honest. We brought forth an ultimatum. If he wanted to continue living here, he would have to kick in rent like the rest of us. He reiterated that he was flat broke, and still hadn't landed a job yet. One of us asked if he had applied at the Burger King a few blocks from the house, since they had a now hiring sign up. I still don't recall Corey's exact phrasing here, but luckily it doesn't matter. However, he chose to dress it up. His answer boiled down to one simple response. "I don't want to work fast food or retail though," he said with this nary a hint of irony to a room of retail workers and full-time college students. We gave him 2 weeks to find other lodging. Needless to say, he was not welcome at D&D anymore, either. Week 4, the aftermath. Lucky for Corey, he was able to convince another group of mutual friends to take him into their off-campus rental house. Tragically, no lesson had been learned over the past month. Corey monopolized their living room TV, did not get a job, would not apply at retail or fast food, and put down everyone else's tastes in media. After another 3 or 4 weeks, they too had had all they could take and told Corey he had to go. Fortunately for our protagonist, he was able to patch things up with his folks and was permitted to return home. Corey, if you're somehow reading or listening to this, I truly wish you're happy and successful in life now. But God, I also hope I never see you again for the rest of my ducking life. End post. So, more of this strays onto the real-life aspect of a D&D horror story instead of, what's happening in the game. And for anyone that has this mentality of never wanting to work retail or fast food or like a call center or anything like that, I'm going to tell you this straight up. Anything you do in life, it's going to require some prior experience. Maybe not necessarily with the job in question. Like if you were trying to go into, say, a data analyst job, they may not require previous data analyst work to get into that, but I can almost guarantee they're going to ask for some sort of customer relation or previous work experience just to show that you know how to get into the office on time and, be a productive worker. So, unless you're incredibly lucky, you're probably going to go into retail, fast food, call center, etc. Even I started at a call center working for Apple, the computer company. Well, they do more phones now than anything, but you get what I'm saying. I worked at their call center, and I actually ended up making a career out of it. I progressed up through the food chain and am now a business analyst at my day job. So you could potentially turn it into something that it's not. Think working at fast food and eventually going up to a district manager, something like that. But yeah, being stubborn like what Corey's doing here, you're not going to get anywhere in life. Frankly put, if you need a job, there are far more of these type of jobs out there than anything else. So you're going to be able to easily get one of these. And at the very least, hold on to it until you can get a job that you like a bit more. Now, onto the D&D aspect, yes, don't just try to randomly homebrew whatever you want. Discuss it with the DM. And the DM, to their credit, tried to work with Corey here. The whole using their tail as their means of holding a dagger was actually pretty interesting. And I think from a flavor aspect, pretty fun to work with. Maybe, they have an underdeveloped arm or they're missing an arm, so it makes sense. But no, Corey just wanted to use that as an extra attack to give himself a little bit of extra advantage, which is just no fun to anyone but Corey himself. It really sucks the fun out of it for everyone else. Anyhow, that's it for today's story, and I do want to apologize for the lack of videos as of late. I've effectively been without AC for the past 2 weeks, and my recording booth easily goes over 100 degrees Fahrenheit when I'm recording, so I'm doing it with love for you all today. But yeah, that's it for the story. As always, the source of it is in the description below. And if you liked the video, and you want to see more videos just like this one, be sure to hit that subscribe button and bell notification icon in order to be notified of my future videos. Now, while you wait for those future videos, here are a few related videos that you can watch in the meantime.